The speech you're about to hear was given on Sunday, September 4th, 1983, by Robert Matthews at the General Convention of the National Alliance in Arlington, Virginia.
Stand up like men! Do it. Do it. Stand up like men! I'm particularly encouraged by the success that Texas Klan leader Louis Beam has had in a beam-fisted truckers from a large truck stop at Rock Springs, Wyoming, with many of the truckers either joining on the spot or subscribing to the newsletter. Do it. In Meddling Falls, we have a saying, stand up like men! Arouse filthy coming hard in a large truck stop at Rock Springs, Wyoming, like chickens on a June bug. Thank you, Mike. The task is not going to be easy, eating the trucker's massive palouse. He's shown us it's growing, a living monument to masculinity. Thence, the Aryan farmers came in a large truck stop at Rock Springs, Wyoming. Take heart, kinsmen. Stand up like men! We must, it is our duty to, take advantage of the American farmer.
Welcome to The Empire Never Ended. I'm Fritz, got Boris, we have Ray, and we've got, some old friends of the podcast, but a new light on some old names here today.
Yeah, I know I say this like almost every time I do an episode, but this one connects a lot of the things that we talked about in previous episodes. I swear to God, I say that every fucking time.
Yeah, it's standard intro, yeah.
But this one really does in some ways.
Well, I mean, if you end up doing the Boond and the Order, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Yes, of course. You get all the networking episodes.
Yeah, so we've kind of skirted around this subject in some of the previous episodes because, again, this is connected to a lot of the groups that we talked about before. And this really even, like, it goes all the way back. Like, you know, we'll be, like, Bircherisms involved and all that kind of stuff. So today we're going to be talking about the Order, or the Silent Brotherhood, or Bruderschweigen.
That's my
because, of
name.
course, they needed to have a German name because, we're
Yeah.
Nazis.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're like Midwest American Nazis. No, Southwest, I guess. Where are they from?
Well, Matthews is from the Southwest, but I mean, this is a kind of Pacific Northwest centered episode. I mean, this is the white ethno-state idea up in, Washington
I see.
/ Idaho / Oregon / the Pacific Northwest and that kind of Western Midwest.
All right.
So, yeah,
and also they don't only connect all of these groups that we discussed in the past. They are also, the Order is like admired by groups such as Atomwaffen and so on.
Absolutely. I mean, these guys in the Nazi community are really the stuff of legends. Because compared to like most other like Nazi underground groups, these guys managed to pull off a lot of pretty high profile actions, including like one of the largest armed robberies in U.S. history. And of course, murder and all that shit. And so like, they're kind of admired in the Nazi community for their discipline and, their tight organization. We'll kind of see that that's not really true. They definitely made heroes out of them, and they're kind of bumbling idiots in their own right. I mean, because we are, after all, talking about Nazis. And if we've learned anything over these last 3 arcs, it's, not the brightest guys out there, usually.
Nah.
Although, I'll get into this because I do kind of have a problem with how certain members of the order are like portrayed in the media, and we'll get to that. So it's pretty much impossible to talk about the order without talking about its founder and, well, Fuhrer, although he kind of saw that as like he was head of the board kind of thing, Robert J. Matthews. Now, I've read a bunch of stuff about Matthews. I've watched programs about him, listened to podcasts, whatever. And there's this kind of common narrative of young white man gone astray, his sudden radicalization. Oh, what happens?
He was a good boy.
Exactly. And like, they really do, like, because he's this handsome, all-American, strong man kind of,
he looks like a guy from a John Deere commercial or something like this. Like
exactly.
Good,
but I'm
good
not
salt
really,
of the earth type.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really inclined to believe that narrative, as, we generally don't on this show, but I think in this particular case, that shit is pretty abused. So Robert J. Matthews was born in 1953 in Marfa, Texas. And correct me if I'm wrong, Marfa's come up a few times in the show.
Oh, yeah,
which is surprising because
yes.
it's a tiny-ass fucking town in Texas.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Also the home of the Marfa Lights.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe there's a future
I wasn't going to say it,
somewhere.
but I was.
Who knows?
Yeah, there's an F file in there.
Who
somewhere.
knows?
So he was the youngest son of Johnny and Una Matthews. His other brothers were named Grant and Lee, his mom kind of figuring that they needed to complete some sort of American Civil War dialectic or something. I don't know. I guess Grant was their family name, and when they had the second son, she thought that he should be named Lee because, they live in the South now or something.
Sure.
But, Johnny and Una were not...
Why would you name your two brothers after the Brothers' Wars? The ones that
I know, right?
The
Like opposing sides on the Civil War. Well, because they kind of saw themselves as like good old fashioned Americans. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like his dad, they're not Texans. His dad hails from North Carolina. His family's from North Carolina, and he grew up in Detroit. And same thing with Una. She's a Detroitian. And so again, even though he's not a Texan, I kind of imagine him as this like Hank Hill character, because frequently throughout Robbie's life, he frequently just has to kind of go, "Damn it, Robbie," to him constantly throughout his life.
Well, no, it's straight up Bobby. I mean, it's Bob.
Yeah, he has a.
It's literally
he has a dumb Nazi Bobby.
Yeah.
In
All
this
right.
parallel universe, Bobby Hill is a Nazi.
Damn it, Bobby.
Yeah, all right. I'm with you. I have a perfect image in my head now.
So the elder Matthews moved to Texas after a stint in the Air Force during World War II.
Where he sold propane and propane accessories.
Yeah, teaching at bomber school. But, he was looking for that kind of idyllic small town life after, living in Detroit. And he had spent time in Texas in the Army or in the Air Force and liked it. So, he starts a family and a business in Marfa. Now, he eventually joined the Chamber of Commerce of Marfa. He was, very active in the business community, was pretty successful for a while, and eventually became mayor of Marfa, Texas. Now, he had some problems with the locals, and in some books it says it's because he wasn't particularly racially prejudiced against Mexicans, and had employed quite a few Mexicans, and that angered some of the old-timey whites who didn't like Mexicans.
He'd angered the locals by not being sufficiently racist.
By being sufficiently racist, right? So, that caused problems for him in the community, and they had some economic problems. He ceased being the mayor, his businesses went sour, and eventually they had to move from Marfa. And so he took a job that took him to, the rapidly expanding city of Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix was kind of an interesting place to be in the 50s because it was growing quite a bit, and, it's becoming a major city. And, they moved out to the suburbs of Phoenix. They lived in the city for a bit, moved out to the suburbs. And young Robbie, who was, born in Marfa, spent most of his life, his childhood in Arizona. So he had this kind of like, seems like idyllic suburban 1950s, childhood, but he was a weirdo. And so at the ripe young age of 11, Robbie came across a John Birch Society edition to the local paper that his mom brought home, like, some Sunday paper that had this, as we know, the Birchers would publish in newspapers about the communist threat. And
Right.
little 11-year-old Robbie read that and was inspired and took $5 from his mom and sent back the little coupon and ordered the blue book.
God, what a fucking weirdo. It's not like this stuff was like written for kids. It's
I
like,
know, exactly.
This senator supports socialism. So like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like America's a
nerd.
communist country. And
Good
and
God.
blah, blah,
Was he
blah.
also captain of the debate team?
Yeah, no, but he definitely strong like hall monitor vibes
Sure.
already at this age, like
Yeah.
Like all of the like post-war Nazi groups had founders who were somehow connected to the John Birch Society. Like
absolutely.
even the fucking order. Like
I'll do.
Yeah.
like
Especially the order,
was
like a
Ray
bunch of them
from
were Birches.
Atomwaffen, a member of the John Birch Society.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Probably. I bet
yeah,
he was a hall
probably.
monitor. No. No, but Dan Burrows was a hall monitor.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
All right, kids, don't trust your hall monitors. Beat the shit out of them.
This is the early 60s. And like his parents definitely thought it was weird. And, Johnny, his dad, had some damn it Bobby moments already.
Sure.
Like, what the fuck are you reading all this garbage for? But like his mom was pretty happy basically that he wasn't a dope smoking hippie as like he went on through like middle school and high school and the like.
It might be Mein Kampf, but at least he's reading,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, pretty much exactly that. It's like, well, like he's a clean cut, basically straight edge young man. And, well, that's better than these long haired dope smokers, in town or whatever. As Fritz lights a spliff. So
I was never a hall monitor. I'll say that.
No. But this area that he grew up in, as I said, was like the suburbs, but it was also Mormon country. And we haven't really talked too much about Mormonism.
No, but they keep invading our episodes. They keep taking territory.
But Mormons in particular in this area were involved in the early militia movement. And so through kind of Bircher texts and then kind of being surrounded by these Mormons, little Robbie got exposed to the Minutemen and the work of Robert Boulevard Depew, which we covered in a separate episode.
Another weird kid went by Bolivar as a child.
Yeah, I mean,
these
actually... The
you can
Depew
totally
comes
tell,
up a lot too. Yeah,
like everything you thought about that kid in school was right. You were right.
So continuing in his trajectory to become like an even more insufferable dork, he decided in high school that he was going to convert to Mormonism. Again, his dad was very pissed off about this. He did not like Mormons. He thought they were, like a crazy cult and didn't want his son being involved with those people.
Excuse me, are y'all with the cult?
But again, his mom again stepped in and said, well, at least he's not a dope smoking hippie. Like they don't, drink or do drugs or any of that stuff, clean living, all the good stuff. And, they supported him. But his dad said that like, don't try converting me. Don't try any of that bullshit on me, which he did. Apparently like, stormed into their bedroom one morning with like the Book of Mormon and like started reading to them. And Johnny told him to fuck off and get the fuck out of his bedroom. Yeah. Get the fuck out of here.
Amazing. This is a King of the Hill episode. It really is.
Yeah. Except, now Bobby is, getting involved in the militia movement.
Right.
So since, check it out. So if he joined the Bircher Youth Group when he was 11 years old, which is very young.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes.
Apparently, like when there was a Bircher convention in Phoenix, he was like, held out as like an example of like a good youth that like is into that because other fucking kids were that big of dweebs. But, so by the time he was in high school, he was in Bircher shit for quite some time. Right. And so, he had already developed that like strong anti-tax mentality. and decided that, like, after high school, again, pissing off his parents, saying he wasn't going to go to college because that's, you know, a hotbed of commies. There's nothing for him there, and that he wanted to join the military, but concluded basically that the military is for cucks because the military was going to try to prosecute Lieutenant William Calley for the My Lai massacre.
Okay.
And he thought that was treason, and indication that the military is also subverted by communists because, well, you know, if you can't massacre hundreds of Vietnamese civilians and get away with it, then, you know.
Yeah.
And Calley did pretty much get away with it. They barely sanctioned him. Like, he spent most of his life running a pizza shop in the Carolinas or some shit. Like, you know, he didn't go to, like, prison for the rest of his life for war crimes, you know, whatever. So, you know, after high school, young Robbie went to work in the mines around Phoenix. He worked in a couple different mines and started, you know, eking out a living for himself and starting a militia. Because what else is a young 19-year-old fresh out of high school going to do in the suburbs of Phoenix? A young Mormon bircher.
Good Lord. Where does this energy come from? Comes home from the fucking mines and starts, like, sending out, you know, membership forms and shit.
Yeah. So it's not quite clear when the Sons of Liberty, which is the name of this militia, was founded. They kept, you know, a pretty secretive organization. And actually, I spoke too soon. They thought of themselves as like a super secret organization, but clearly they weren't. Because one of the first thing that basically put Bobby on the public spotlight is when he contacted a local conservative TV host, Ted Knight from Cool TV.
Ted Knight.
So, like I said, Robbie called this conservative TV host, Ted Knight, basically told him, you know, you are the only, like, conservative voice in the area, and would you like to see what, like, a well-disciplined militia looks like?
Okay.
And they made him go through a bunch of secret things, like they led him to some payphones and, you know, flash your lights twice and somebody will come meet you. And then they took him out to the desert and showed him Sons of Liberty maneuvers. So this was described as, like, quite a few, like, masked, well-armed men performing these kind of crawling and maneuvers and, you know, typical kind of, like,
basic training stuff.
Showcasing, like, how well-disciplined they were. Ted Knight, despite some, well, the FBI had contacted him about this when they found out that he was going to air this and advised him against it because they wanted to gather data on who these people were, but he did it anyway. And young Robbie was quite pleased with this and would later call him back and ask him if he wanted to go with them to cover an invasion of Cuba.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, say yes to that.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
that would be hilarious.
We'll see that the Sons of Liberty didn't exactly last too much longer after this. So
they were friends with some, what were they called? There was some, like, anti-Castro Cuban group in the South. They were tight with Alpha 66, I think.
Yeah. They had this cockamamie, like, Bay of Pigs Part 2 idea that they were going to somehow carry out because, yeah, that would work extremely well.
Part 1 was so great.
Yeah, because Part 1 worked incredibly well. But so, like, it turns out that from what we understand of the membership of Sons of Liberty, it's about what you'd expect. It was about half Mormon, and the other half was kind of bikers, that kind of milieu of the Southwest. And it fell apart pretty spectacularly when one of the drunk alcoholic biker members, Greg Thorpe, got wasted at a Christmas party and got into an argument with the people, his friends at the party, and ended up murdering them and his wife.
Whoa.
So yeah, he went out blasting, shot two of his, like, buddies and his wife.
Damn.
Now, this is typically in the narrative about Matthew's life where they say that he was shocked by the violence and that how he didn't expect to see such a terrible thing happen and blah, blah, blah. That might be true, but I mean, he knew what he was getting himself into.
I mean, he's not anti-violence, obviously. Like,
no, clearly
I mean,
not.
he won't be shocked by it, but he's shocked that, what? It wasn't It wasn't Jews or something, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no,
Yeah.
but he's not radicalized yet. Okay, this is just like this is him dabbling in the militia.
I see, he's a dabbler.
I guess the idea that he was traumatized by this, or what are they trying to say?
Well, I think that he said that he was traumatized by this, but I think it's more of the fact that the cops and the feds started really looking into this militia, this clandestine militia, pretty hard, right?
Okay.
But it wasn't the militia that led to his first run-in with the law. Now, since he was a bircher from a young age, and we said that he was against taxes and working, he was straight out of high school working, he decided that, he wasn't going to pay taxes. Now, you can get away with that oftentimes if you're smart about it, and he wasn't. So as a 20-year-old, he filed that he had 10 dependents and thus, was exempt from his taxation. The IRS noticed that, hey, this 20-year-old has 10 dependents and lists himself as single and unmarried, which I think raised some alarms. And so, of course, the long arm of the IRS reached him.
Thus instantly proving everything he ever thought about them somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I think the feds had also pretty much figured out that he was in the Sons of Liberty as well. And they, his parents' house got a visit from the taxman and the lawman. And he spent a night in a holding cell, which was deeply traumatizing to him, and received 6 months probation. So, he got like a slap on the wrist. But, while this was happening, like the feds came a couple more times to his parents' house to investigate the militia activity. And this caused them, I guess, a lot of social embarrassment because, they lived in like suburbia and you had like FBI agents showing up at your door and, the nosy neighbors were probably like, oh, what's going on with them, So they were pissed off. And Robbie decided that he was going to give it kind of one last try to restart the Sons of Liberty. And he kind of did, but then decided he was going to go on a road trip with his buddy. So, classic American road trip,
Yeah, get his head clear.
Yeah, young men, they decided to, drive off and see the great sights of the American West and whatever. And so during this road trip, they went up to the Pacific Northwest. And it's that trip was where he found what would eventually be his home forever. They drove way out into the middle of nowhere, Washington State, kind of up close to the Canadian border, and apparently he fell in love with the town of Medellin Falls.
It's interesting. Okay, that story I heard did sound fishy, where he looked at a map and pointed a finger at random or something. That was the story that Pierce's biographer said about it.
Yeah. So, about the he wasn't, he was trying to, get his life together. The guy that he did this road trip with would later go to Rhodesia to fight for the white government there. So
yeah,
this is
he just picked that one randomly on a map too. I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Now, again, most narratives say that Robbie here was trying to straighten his life out because he had written to both the feds and his parents that he was, not going to associate with like radical people anymore, that he just wanted to lead like a normal working life. And, people say a lot of shit to their parents in the feds. You know what I mean? A lot of it's not true. And especially since he was trying to convince his dad to help him buy land up there.
Okay.
So for reference purposes, this was right after his probation ended, and this is 1974. So, he's still a young man. So, his dad did agree, okay, like, look, if you're going to get your life together, I'll help you purchase some land. You can, live out your little fantasy out there, be a woodsman and do all that fun stuff. And he did. He bought him some land. Robbie, since he had experience working in mines in Arizona, found some mines in that general area to work in. It was like lead and zinc mines or something like that. Mm-hmm. And started a life there. At this point, he was sending these kind of creepy letters back to his parents being like, I'm doing so well, mommy and daddy. Like, it's so beautiful up here. And he was like drawing like little pictures, like stick figures with smiley faces and smiling
Brunch in the
suns
lead mines is fabulous.
like, oh, it's so beautiful, mommy and daddy. Don't you want to come here and we'll start a
foreman made
family
mimosas
compound? Yeah. So okay, let's say that he was trying to like straighten out. So what does a young man like him do? Try to find a woman. This apparently was not on his radar before when he was like a Bircher Mormon nerd.
No, he had priorities.
Yes, he had priorities. He expressed very little interest in the opposite sex in high school, and that kind of concerned his parents a little bit. And so, since this is the 70s and he lives in the middle of fucking nowhere, he put out personal ads in Mother Earth News, more or less saying that he wanted to find a trad wife.
Okay.
The ad said something like, looking for a woman to share home and land in rural Washington.
It's romantic.
And, he got some responses back, and he did end up meeting his future wife, Debbie McGarity, who at the time was living in Jackson, Wyoming. And he went out there to meet her, and they hit it off. And he talked about how he wanted, a woman is there to have a big family and take care of the kids. And, she was, I guess, into the whole trad wife thing, and eventually moved to Medellin Falls, and they got married in 1976.
All right.
Now, again, this is the kind of gray area in his biography where nobody's quite clear when he made the jump into the Aryan nations.
Okay.
Which, if you look at a map, Hayden Lake, Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, or whatever, where the Aryan Nations is not actually that far away from Medellin Falls. It's about like a 3-hour drive, which in that part of the country is nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so, one could say, okay, maybe he was trying to get his life straight. That's what they all say. And then somehow he got involved with the Aryan Nations. It could also be that he picked that part of the country because he knew that there were guys like that out there. Maybe not explicitly Aryan Nations, but he might have known that this kind of thing was out there.
No, I find it much more convincing that a perfectly normal young boy was out there getting his life straight, and in that process decided that all white militant religion that believes that fucking Jews are space alien Satan creatures, just pulled him away from the straight and narrow. Yeah. No, you gotta want that stuff real bad.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Really do.
So part of what we know about his biography here comes from his buddy Ken Loff, who was like another urban young white guy who decided to like live on the land, and he had bought the plot next to him, and they hit it off and became best friends. Ken Loff would be kind of the good guy in the order throughout the whole thing. Like he was always the one that was like, well, when like shit started to get real crazy, they were like, Ken, you're going to take care of our kids, when we get martyred or something. And he apparently didn't want to kill Jews or do anything like that. But we'll see that he was also a racist. I mean, he ended up testifying against them and stuff, but like, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Order light.
So we know that by 1980, at least, he had already been really into the book Which Way, Western Man, which we haven't really mentioned, but it was published by the National Alliance. And the National Alliance factors heavily into this story, like throughout.
Yeah.
So it's a shitty book published by National Alliance in 1978. We know that he was into it then from like what Ken was saying, that, he was recommending that reading and all that kind of stuff. So it turns out that his dream of, having a bunch of white kids on the compound was unfortunately not going to happen. Debbie was unable to carry a pregnancy. She suffered several miscarriages, and they decided in 1981 to adopt a son. And they adopted a little baby that they named Clinton, or Clint.
Huh. Whoops.
Now, his neighbor and best buddy, Ken, had also had a baby in 1981, and Robbie suggested to them that they were going to baptize their kids at this church that's 3 hours away from here.
Oh,
and it's a good place for white families. Now, take a wild guess. What do you think that church is?
Well, I'm going to guess it's the fucking Aryan Nations compound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Church of Jesus Christ Christian.
Excellent name.
So, I mean, it's pretty obvious at this point that Matthews had known about the Aryan Nations, right? And was definitely a big-ass racist during this, like, quote-unquote normal period. Now, Matthews, it seems, wasn't actually super into Christianity at this point. He had ceased to be a Mormon. He wasn't really into the Christian identity thing so much as like a religious philosophy. We'll see later that he was kind of way more into like some neo-pagan stuff.
Okay, I can see how he kind of moved into National Alliance then.
Yeah, exactly. He was way more on the National Alliance side of things than the Aryan Nations, but the Aryan Nations was right there, and he saw it as like a good place to like network and connect and, you know, meet fellow Nazis. And he definitely believed in that Aryan Nation's dream of the Pacific Northwest as like a white homeland. And he was a big advocate of that. So like, even though he, you know, may not have necessarily been a hardcore Christian identity person, you know, he baptized his fucking kids in Christian identity. And, you know, the Aryan Nations compound is where like a lot of members of the order would eventually come from.
Okay.
So we know also that at this time he was writing ads into Liberty Lobby's paper, The Spotlight, inviting white people to come to the White American Bastion. We're going to cover Liberty Lobby separately, so we kind of won't go too much into that now. And, you know, life seemed to be going well for him. Even though the mines started to close in that area, he was able to find a job at a local dam and was also, you know, when he was advertising in Liberty Lobby's paper, telling young...
Nothing like a terrorist working at a dam.
For old Beavis and Butthead references, is this a goddamn? But I guess he told, like, you know, all the young white men that there are jobs out there. Like, you know, the mines are closing, the Jews are closing them or whatever. But, you know, there's at least, you know, work in the dam. So, like I said, he had been writing to his parents the whole time, and he was telling his parents that he's on the straight and narrow, and that,
this is so stupid. I'm so sorry. It's not even worth interrupting you. But I was just thinking about, damn it, Bobby. But now it's like something he has to do, you know?
Man, this is a dad joke there.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Please continue.
Like I said, he had been writing to his family and being like, you know, everything's wonderful up here, sunshine and stick figures and all that, and told them that they should move up there and that they should all live up there as a family. And, you know, mom and dad had been up there. They thought it was beautiful. And when they retired, they went up there to live and, you know, build a house and live out their retirement in this beautiful area. Now, his brother Lee, who was a school teacher and by all accounts, like not right-wing at all, decided to join the family. He found a job up there in a school and moved up there as well. The oldest son, Grant, was schizophrenic and institutionalized, and they brought him up there to live with them for a while, but he kept on like running out naked in the streets and stuff like that, and like caused some trouble. So they ended up institutionalizing him again somewhere in that area, I think around Spokane or whatever. But the point is, like, his family moved up there, and again, this is where the narrative says that like something went wrong, and you know, whatever, he was already into the Aryan fucking Nations. But I guess his path to being more black-pilled, as the kids say, comes with the incident of Gordon Kale. Now, this was a prominent right-wing cause in the 1980s. Gordon Kale was a Posse Comitatus dude. We talked a little bit about them from the militia movement. There's a significant overlap actually with like former Posse Comitatus people and the order. And so, you know, Gordon Kale was like this anti-tax Posse Comitatus dude in Texas who also was a bircher, a prominent bircher in Texas for some time.
Okay. And
got into the militia movement. He died in 1983 in an epic gun battle with federal agents when like the taxmen again came after him. He shot a bunch of federal agents, like him and his son got into this gun battle. They killed one of them. He fled to another like survivalist bunker in Arkansas where he died in another epic gun battle with the feds and the cops. and in the process managed to kill another cop, I think a sheriff or something.
Right. I think we actually mentioned him in the Christian Identity episode.
Right, because this was like a big rallying, like, you know, he was like a big martyr for these people.
Right. Okay.
Because again, like, you know, what do like white people in the 1980s have as their like cause to be, you know, like I'm an oppressed person, and it's like, you know, I have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, right. Yeah, it was getting thin out there.
Yeah,
they were doing real well in the 80s.
Yeah. So of course, you know, Gordon Cale's a big hero for them because he didn't want to pay taxes and wanted to have guns and shit like that. So by 1983, we know that Matthews was more heavily involved in Aryan Nations. There's footage of him at an Aryan Nations rally in Spokane, 1983, where he was basically running security for them at this point. So, like, you know, in the video, you can see him like yelling at anti-racist protesters, like getting up in their face, and you know, being a shithead Nazi.
Yeah, like running security, important job for many big Nazis in the past. It's like their version of hall monitor, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, security is in general like a good field for, you know, budding Nazis the world over. You know,
Yeah, buddy.
They tend to run security companies. But, you know, so he was more heavily involved with Aryan Nations. He was going to their like yearly conventions that they would have on the compound. Thanksgiving was another big event at the Aryan Nations compound, and he would go there and network and meet people. And he started to like, you know, develop a little posse around him. So, you know, his buddies helped him, for example, to build a barracks on his land. It's kind of like I don't know, like an Amish barn raising ceremony, except for Nazis. So they like built a barrack. So they built some barracks, and you know, they poured some concrete steps, and then they wrote like "White Pride Worldwide" on it, and like you know, etched their initials into it, and you know, it's the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah, I didn't know they had such rich traditions.
Oh yes,
the old barracks raising.
The things you don't know about these people.
I'm thankful for those.
Yeah. Now, it's at this point when he started to like have this kind of crew of people around him that his fanboy dumb for the Turner Diaries started to like come out in a major way. So, you know, all of his friends would come over to his house and he'd be like, "Hey guys, have you ever read the Turner Diaries? This book's great." And we know from previous episodes that the Turner Diaries are fucking garbage. But, you know, if you were to sum it up quickly, it's fanfic.
Yeah, okay. It's just the most. It's if you wrote like an exciting terrorist adventure as though it was a technical manual. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
It's the most boring and most violent book I'd read in a while, somehow together at the same time.
Now, it was written by William Luther Pierce of the National Alliance, and 1983 is also when we see his first appearance at a National Alliance event.
Oh, okay.
So he goes to their like big conference, wherever the fuck it was, and gives a rousing speech.
So stand up like men and drive the enemy into the sea. Stand up like men and swear a sacred oath upon the green graves of our sires that you will reclaim what our forefathers discovered, explored, conquered, settled, built, and died for. Stand up like men and reclaim our soil. Kinsmen, arise.
Now, I find his voice to be incredibly funny, and
really
this speech
weird.
in particular, it sounds like he's trying to give like a rousing speech, but is like kind of too meek for it. So like this is like a point where he should be yelling, but he's kind of like forcing this like enthusiasm.
It's like he doesn't know how to yell. Like he's trying it for the first time.
But you know, like it's not a yelly culture, you know. Down where he picked up that accent, you people talk. Their mouths are usually fairly closed. You know, you talk kind of low. You keep things short. You know what I mean? It's a
So like the stand up like men
Southern
thing, I like saying it a lot because it's hilarious. It's like I think it's like catchphrase. Like later on, like when he's like talking to his mistress and like, you know, explaining why they had to like murder Jews, he's like, "Because we have to stand up like men." And I guess he thought this was like a really important thing to him. It was at the National Alliance conference that he also connected with some more of these kind of East Coast Nazis that would kind of play a bigger role in some of the order's activities later. So like, what was primarily for him like a West Coast phenomenon, like, Aryan nations and all those like, whatever militia groups in the Southwest, he now started to make like more serious contacts in the East and in the Southeast and the like. William Luther Pierce apparently liked him. They all thought that like,
he was really important to him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it gives them a lot of money later too, but I mean,
Yeah,
they were really moved by his speech.
Bob Matthews fucking made their hats that they had, little baseball caps and shit.
I'm sorry. I just also want to say something else about that speech. It really struck me because he talks a lot about like the Aryan farmer, and it goes on and on about like how like they're like a farming people and like blah 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 back to the land. And I can't help but think that like a bunch of these guys are like middle class suburban guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That have this like David Lane's not, but like the rest of them are like these guys that have this really like kind of idealized view of like the farmer and like this white homeland right in the Pacific Northwest is supposed to be great because like there are no minorities there, and like those people are clearly like gonna be totally on board with like their racial philosophies.
Oh, in the Turner Diaries, there's that scene where the main guy, Earl Turner, is driving out of the city and kind of in the late part of the revolution. And what does he see but like a farm being run by young white people, like ruddy cheeked and like working with the land,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, and we saw this with the Aryan Nations episode too. Like they really thought that like the locals there would, be sympathetic to them, and like in very few cases was that true. Like he loved Medellin Falls because there was like literally no minorities there, and then at some point like the mid 80s around this time, like one Asian family moved in, and like the local townsfolk like elected him as mayor, and this like really pissed him off. Like he would like every time somebody would move up there, he'd be like, they got this goddamn beep 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 as a mayor, right? So like, clearly, like the idyllic white farmer and shit like that doesn't give a shit about like
No, it's a common theme for them.
They're
they're often
racism
rejected
to that extent. Like I mean they had the townsfolk in Idaho like were often pissed off by the fucking Aryan nations and like tried to run them out of town a few times.
William Luther Pierce, I think, couldn't open up a bookstore. You know what I mean? Like
in West Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wanted, guys.
So we've established then that he started to see things kind of in a more militant light. I think like maybe even that like kind of they elected a Asian mayor like started to blackpill him even more on like white like people that aren't in the movement and that like don't understand like the revolutionary potential of like the white man or something, and like how they're actually oppressed because they have to pay taxes and whatever.
He got to the point when the white racist starts hating white people, which is
yes.
The apotheosis.
So it's around this time when he comes back from the National Alliance meeting that he decides to like start a more serious action group. So he gathered around like some of these friends that he had from the Aryan Nations, a couple people that were associated with National Alliance that had since moved out to the area, and decided to found what would be later known as the Order or the Silent Brotherhood or the whatever, Bruder Schweig or whatever the fuck. And they did this in this kind of bizarre, like semi-pagan ritual. Like he invited them all like to the house, to the compound with their families, and the wives all made food for them, and they had like a big dinner, and then the men folk went to the barracks to have a talk while the women cleaned up. And so they go to the barracks, and he explains to them that like he wants to find this group, and that they have, that this is going to be like super serious, that they're going to take action and finally do something. It's been enough talk. Like we've all been to like, the Aryan nations, like events and rallies, and like, it's all fun and, games and stuff, but they're not actually doing anything. Like we got to stand up for the white man, stand up like man. And so the initial like founding members are Richard Kemp, Bill Soderquist, Ken Loff, his neighbor, the nice guy, David Lane, who we'll get back to in a little bit, as well as some like Aryan Nations guys, Denver Parmenter, Dan Bauer, Randy Dewey, and Bruce Pierce. Bruce Pierce is a big fuck up for them and causes a lot of trouble.
He's just there for the name.
So since we've, on the show gone through many initiation rituals, I'm going to describe this one a little bit because
Please
it's pretty
do.
funny.
Yes.
So he made a big circle of candles.
Oh, I was gonna guess candles.
Oh yeah, you got to have the candles. Not
Robes?
torches.
You get robes?
No, I don't think they had robes. But they needed a small white child. Not to sacrifice. This isn't like 09A we're talking about here. This was going to be like what they're fighting for. So like he sent like one of the guys back and he's like, hey, can you get your daughter in here?
We need a baby.
He goes back to the house and like the wife's like, fuck no, what do you need like my child for? And like in
Bobby
the
needs a
barracks,
baby now.
yeah. And so like the one guy's like wife said like, fuck no, you're not taking my baby anywhere. But like one of the other wives agreed. And so they bring this baby and they put it like in the center of this circle, and then they all take their oath. Now, we've read a lot of oaths on here. This one is by far one of the longest, so I'm really not going to go and read the whole thing.
All right. You can
But
read it to us.
I'll take some highlights.
We'll just all read it in a circle afterwards.
Yes.
We need a baby.
Yes.
The funny thing is part of it, like he's so unimaginative that he lifted part of it from his National Alliance speech because he thought that was like such a moving speech.
The best
So, like,
speech
he
ever. Yeah.
Even opens as like, I, as a free Aryan man, hereby swear an unrelenting oath upon the green graves of our sires. Is this familiar to you? We just heard this. Upon the children in the wombs of our wives, upon the throne of God Almighty. Sacred is his name. To join together in holy union with the brothers in a circle and declare a full right, blah, 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 Aryan total victory of the Aryan race. And then I, as an Aryan warrior, swear myself to complete secrecy to the order and total loyalty to my comrades.
Yeah, I bet that worked out.
And it goes on and on. Like that's just part of it. Like, let me bear witness to you, my brothers, that we should blah, blah, blah. If we should ever be taken prisoner, we do whatever we can to free you and all this other kind of shit.
This is like whenever I, sometimes I make an episode here and y'all think I'm ending and, and then like there's 20 more minutes and then y'all think I'm ending and then there's another 20 minutes, It's
No joke. This oath goes on forever. Like, we hereby invoke the blood covenant and declare that we are in a full state of war and will not lay down our weapons and blah, blah, blah.
Meanwhile,
blah.
this baby's like screaming.
Yeah, this baby's like crying in the middle of it. So eventually, I guess they take the baby back to the house, and then
Thank God.
all the men folks sit down and start talking about what they're going to do.
Okay.
So naturally, they're like, okay, we need money. What should we do? What should we do? How are we going to get this money? And Matthew suggests committing robbery. Now, Bauer, who was a Christian identity preacher and had his own church somewhere else in Idaho, was like, hey, guys, doesn't the Bible say it's wrong to steal?
What?
And so they all scratching their heads like, oh, yeah, that's right. I guess we have to pretend to be like moral, upstanding citizens. And so what conclusion does like a moral, upstanding racist come to? We should rob black people. And it's because black people are obviously all criminals and pimps and drug dealers. And they all like totally agreed to that. They were like, oh, yeah, good idea. Yeah. That's totally cool with God. Like,
Yes.
That's...
Yeah, he was famous for specifically exempting black people from the Ten Commandments.
Right. Yeah. So, a few days later, they decide to like try to go on a run to Spokane, the big city, which, for them is a big city. It's like 100-some thousand people at this point.
Yeah, it's a city.
It's a place that has black people at least, or non-whites.
Right.
And so they drive around the black neighborhood in Spokane looking for black people to rob, but like, even like when the book says this, they're like, none of them knew anything about black people. And like, and so like, they were like trying to like, I don't know, figure out what a pimp, like where they could find a pimp. And like, we're probably like looking for like Dolomite or something. They were like looking for like a dude in like a pimp hat. And like, eventually they started just like following around like any black person that was like well dressed and like driving a nicer car. And like that didn't really come to anything. So they like went to a black bar and just like sat there waiting to see like criminals and pimps and drug dealers, and of course didn't see any of that. But like David Lane was like, look at how they're looking at us. That's because we're crazy white boys. Like, you got to be crazy white boys. Like, they fear us. You know what I mean? And meanwhile, I was probably like, what the fuck are these guys like? Just like sitting here staring at like every single person in this bar.
Yeah.
So
what are
as
these
like,
cops doing here?
yeah, probably. I mean, Matthews definitely looked like a fucking cop. I would.
Yeah, totally.
So of course that doesn't really go well, and they decide to do the next best thing, which is like, okay, if we have to rob something, and clearly I guess we can't find any black people who are criminals. Because like, well, I guess I thought they all were, guys. Like, I don't know what's going on.
I got to reread the Bible because that is not
didn't
what I
say
read.
anything about like black working folk having a drink at the bar after work. Whatever the fuck. Like,
and so polite. Total failure.
So what's the next best moral thing? Well, they had heard that like a porn store had opened up in town.
This one,
and it was like, okay, fine, like, God will be okay with this, like, porn is evil and bad and whatever. And so they decide to like hit it. It seemed like it was in a good location too. It was kind of on the outskirts of town near the highway, like an easy place to kind of dip out from when they did the robbery. Now this is going to kind of sink into a different level of absurdity, kind of like a real like head nodding, like head scratching moment. It was like, Jesus Christ, these people are fucking idiots.
These are this is the elite force.
This is the elite force.
Neo-Nazi dreams.
Matthews thought that like the best way to disguise himself was to quote unquote darken his face.
Oh.
So they basically went in there in
Full
like
tactic
brown
from the
face.
ANP.
And like he put like a fake mustache on.
Sorry, that's also from the fucking Turner Diaries. That's straight up from the Turner Diaries.
Is it for real?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, they are like literally just doing
just
the
reading and
Turner
repeating.
Diaries.
Yeah.
So yeah, Matthews like puts on a fake mustache and like goes in brown face, and like all of his buddies think it's hilarious, and they're like, "He looks Mexican." And they start calling him Carlos, which by the way is going to be his code name throughout the order. Like especially later when they like go super underground and take on these like code only refer to us by our code names. He's Carlos because you look like a Mexican.
But you guys remember the Spanish that they tried to do from Turner Diaries? No, they were like
Siesta frijole, hasta la vista.
like that's what the yes. Please tell me they try to speak Spanish.
No, I mean the accounts of the robbery are basically that like they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, and it was like super awkward because they like went into the store and like waited for people to leave and then like robbed it and like just didn't know what the fuck they were doing. And they were pretty happy when they got away with it, and then they got home and realized that they'd only stolen like $350.
I was gonna say, like, how much could they have?
How much does a porn store in like rural Washington have in the cash register in like 1983?
One of them was just stashing magazines into a big bag, though. Too,
oh yeah, it's like, ooh, interracial porn.
They just wiped out their interracial section and left.
Because I've mentioned this before, but that is like a common thing with Nazis is that they like
absolutely.
hate watch interracial porn, beat off to it. So
They're
you're probably
terrible.
right.
Very confused people. They really don't know what they want and don't want.
So obviously they're like, fuck, man, like we can't rob random black people, like we can't find black criminals. Porn stores, I guess, don't have enough business to have like serious amounts of money in them. Like what else is like
to fund an entire revolution against the United States government.
Yeah. So then one of them brings up,
wouldn't it be pretty easy from like their kind of perspective also to conclude that like banks are immoral or something like that? I mean,
yeah, they get to that.
Okay, yeah. But I was also thinking maybe at like whatever in the bunker or barracks rather, that there's like one of those whiteboards with like a thermometer on it, they have like the target goal for revolution funding, and they walk in after this and they have like just a little single red line on the bottom of the thermometer.
Well, because when they had initially like made these plans, and they would do this later, but like the initial idea was that like, okay, once we get the money, we split up some, like we take some home, and the rest we like give to the movement.
Good.
And they use the expression as like tithing, right? Like with the church.
Ah, okay. All right.
Like you give a portion to the movement. But of course, like when you have like $350 and like whatever, how many dudes is it? Like 8 guys?
No, yeah.
It doesn't-
That's $5, boys.
yeah. Yeah. So they're pretty disappointed about that. And then one of them brought up like, because as we've seen before, like so many of these Nazi movements are like really envious of like the black like liberation movement, freedom movement. And they were like, man, if only we could do what like the BLA does and like knock over those like armored cars, like, you know, they got balls and like shit like that, which of course, like I said, we've seen this like a million times in the Nazi groups. Like they want to have that momentum and that energy and that kind of like support from their community, but they're not like oppressed in any way. And so of course, like there's like no there's like no incentive for anybody to like want to do this kind of shit and like go out blasting. Like you know, this isn't like the BLA. Like those people have like something at stake. You know what I mean?
They're like the only people who want to be oppressed. You know?
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with them?
And so, like, apparently that's, like, how one of those ideas came about. And I guess, you know, that's easy enough to rationalize. Jews control the finance system, so really what we're doing is stealing from the Jews. And so, like, they decided they were going to start looking into this. But I just have to mention one other, like, wacky adventure of theirs. Because it's funny to me. Because I'm just, like, trying to imagine this happening. So they had, like, heard that one of the, like, the Rothschilds was coming to Seattle to, like, for, like, some fundraising event to give a speech. And they decided they were going to try to bomb it and, like, kill her. Even though, like, on their... they have like a tiered system of like what their actions are, and like robberies, like first, like collecting money, and then later is like assassination and shit.
Okay.
So they sent some dudes out to Seattle to like scope it out. And I guess they were on the campus of the University of Seattle. And like one of them saw like a sign for like the Arab American Students Association. And they were like, oh, hell yeah, like Arabs, they fucking hate Jews. And so they like wrote a letter to this like student organization, like asking them to like for their support against the Jew or something. And of course, like never got a response from it because can you imagine like whatever, like Arab American student organization, like the 80s in Seattle, like gets this letter and they're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. No, I'm sure everyone had a copy of that letter. Like that was,
apparently one of them had also suggested like trying to go to the Syrian government to get money and like go to the Arabs to get money because they like hate Jews. And this would come up later, like when Matthews would like make up stories to tell his mistress about like how big they were. Like he would say shit like, yeah, we're in contact with like the Arabs and like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that's just not like, it's not true. It didn't happen. So that's just like a funny little thing. But, you know, they definitely decide that, okay, like we're going to have to start like robbing banks and possibly like armored cars and stuff like that. And that requires a high level of organization. So in the meantime, Damn It Bobby was finally relieved of the damn it Bobbies in his life. And his father, Johnny Matthews, died on December 1st, 1983 of cancer. And he'd apparently told his mom, like, oh, I'm sad, but like, you know, basically I won't have to listen to dad like talk shit on me anymore. And I like don't care about what women's opinions are. So like, fuck you, mom. Like,
wow.
Wow.
But that was the speech he gave at the funeral, huh?
Yeah, you know, this is my retelling, and so of course, apparently right. Matthews very rarely cussed. He was, you know, that kind of clean living man.
I feel bad comparing him to Bobby Hill now because Bobby Hill would never do that.
No, Bobby Hill would never.
Bobby Hill's a good boy.
Yes, but he was apparently like he loved his mother and all that shit. But like he was like kind of relieved that his dad wouldn't like talk shit on him anymore because his dad like the whole time was like, "Why are you bringing these like kooky idiots around? Like, who the fuck are these people? Like, blah blah blah." He was very disappointed that like he had dove even farther into like the radical right, and that he was racist. You know, apparently like he witnessed some like racist outburst of his like in town and was like kind of shocked by it or whatever. But things seem to like that does seem to be some sort of turning point in his life because they really started to like accelerate with like some of the more radical actions soon thereafter. And you know, before they really started doing the robberies, David Lane had his own idea, which proved to be a pretty good one for them. So David Lane had contacts with dudes that were doing counterfeiting. And he suggested that would be like a pretty good way to raise money. In the
also
meantime,
Turner
like,
Diaries.
Yeah, exactly. like, okay, like we can counterfeit money and then like rob banks. And so like if we do both at once, we'll be making like lots of money. And so like David Lane kind of takes charge of that operation and starts his own like counterfeiting gig and starts printing $50 bills at first, but then like kind of moves on to like all denominations. And he had some experience, I guess, with that before, like when he was in the Klan in Denver and stuff like that. He knew those people. He was able to like acquire like a printing press for it like pretty easily. I guess like if you run in those circles, there's, especially back then when like counterfeiting was way easier than it is today. Like it probably, you know, if you were like a long-term Klansman and like militia Bircher or whatever the fuck, you could probably easily do that. And of course, following with the Turner Diaries, they believed if they did that enough, it would destabilize the U.S. economy. And you know.
Even though in the Turner Diaries it does say it doesn't work in the end. So
yeah, they skipped that part.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, the counterfeiting would kind of be their undoing in some ways. And we'll get to like kind of why that is later. Because like, again, counterfeiting is not easy, and it was easier then, but like it was still like not hard to detect fake bills always, you know, like.
Sure.
And so like it fucked them on like multiple levels, like in different places from coast to coast. But, you know, while they were getting the counterfeiting operation set up, Matthews went with David Lane to like back to Denver to pick up this printing press. And on the way back, I know this seems kind of roundabout, but it is important. They stopped off at like this woman's house that David Lane knew from before to spend the night, like to cut their trip in half or whatever. And this was this woman named Zilla Craig.
Great name.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And Bob Matthews like immediately fell in love with Zilla, and this would be the woman in his life from now on. He never actually divorced Debbie, but she became his long-term mistress. And in fact, like the whole her whole family kind of got involved with this. Like her mom was like into like white power shit.
Oh, right.
They came from like that kind of background. I guess they had grown up somewhere else in the Midwest. And
so she's from a good family, you're saying?
Yeah. In this community, that's like the best you can get. Like, damn, like she's into the movement. Her like, you know, her mom's into the movement.
Oh, yeah.
Like, damn. And like he like her mom takes part. And like later on, we'll see like when it comes to like murdering Alan Berg.
Oh, yeah?
She plays a role in that.
Word.
Which is like pretty fucking nuts.
Well, I mean, their relationship name is Bobzilla. So you can't, come on, once in a lifetime.
Yeah. I just also want to give you like an example of what he thought a romantic letter to Zilla would
please.
Be. I came across this like just like I couldn't not include it in my notes. When we first started in the direction we are now going, we had a large number of men. When it became obvious that we were going to do more than just talk, most of the men started backing out and turning their backs to those of us who have retained our manhood and our Aryan pride. So be it. Monday afternoon will bring either victory or my death. Sometimes, in the dark hours of the night, I wish I was a normal man so I could enjoy life unhindered. But I know what future awaits our children unless I stand up like a man and fight. Even if enough of us stand up and fight, then your two fine sons will have the future they deserve. They'll be able to stand up and say, I am white, I am proud, I am free, and no Jew or mudman will dare stand against them.
Holy shit. I'm going to have a fucking counter running for every time he says man in that.
Or stand up.
Or stand up, yeah.
Occurs in, it's like
all
you know,
right.
2 paragraphs. It happens like 10 times.
Listeners, whatever you're doing, go get your favorite liquor, rewind.
Take a shot every time he
Every
says
time.
stand up or
Yes.
some reference to men or
Yes.
manhood.
And then you'll essentially be caught up with me.
There's like another little thing about the relationship. So he mentions that she has 2 sons. I guess she had like, you know, a series of like abusive relationships and shit like that. And like really liked Matthews because he was like good with the kids and stuff like that. And he also like tries to knock her up. And when they finally do start hooking up, he's like, no diaphragm for you tonight, ma'am. We're making children or whatever. We're making white Aryan babies tonight, baby. Yeah, I think I just kind of made him more Southern than he actually is, but whatever. That voice
He's
is a little
pretty
bit more
Southern.
It is.
just
It does
a-
kind of have that like Texas like.
Yeah, it's just kind of eats his
like-
words a little bit like this. Yeah, forget the diaphragm tonight, honey. We're making babies.
Yeah. Aryan babies, Aryan pride, my manhood. Behold my manhood. Strong, Aryan manhood. Erect, throbbing. Just like- I bet he actually, like in his private writing, described.
Have you heard of the Yak Doc, baby?
So of course, this all happened in the course of getting the counterfeit operation started up. That did start up, and they now started to do some robberies. So they started from banks, and they planned it out reasonably well. They knew not to like really shit where they eat. So like they hit banks in several different states. Like we kind of also mentioned like where geographically this is located. I mean, especially for non-US listeners, this kind of corner of Washington state, it's easy to access. States like Idaho and, even go up further into Oregon, later into like down to California. You can kind of get,
You can
get
bug out
around.
into Canada pretty quick too if you need to.
And you can bug out into Canada too. Yeah. Canada, later they had some like grandiose plots to do some crazy shit in Canada that they never did. So, they started with some banks and they were able to like, do that pretty well. Like I said, they staked out the locations. They're pretty coordinated. And so, they'd go in like pairs or like with three people, hand the teller a sign, like a message saying that you're being robbed, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they would have to pull out their guns, but really not often. I think in their first heist, Matthews got what's it called? One of those dye bombs.
Oh yeah, die pack.
Die pack, yeah, like in the bag of money, but like I guess he went back to Zilla's house and they like cleaned the money together and they were able to like salvage a good bit of it. But like so in these like early heists, they were getting like decent amounts of money, like tens of thousands of dollars. So not like really like an insane amount, but for them, that was a lot. And they would start like distributing it to various people that they thought were worthy, and of course keeping some for themselves. Matthews was like giving some to his new lady friend to help her support her kids and blah 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 blah.
Pierce got a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. He would get more from some of the later heists.
Oh, all right.
So, because it builds, right? So, like they start with like these banks, and like I said, they're netting like tens of thousands of dollars, but they want to step it up a notch, and so they start looking into how to do like an armored car robbery, and they pull out. They managed to pull off like a pretty successful one on their first try. So they had cased out. Like a Brinks armored car operation. They followed them around, looked at where they were doing their pickups and like which location would probably have the most money in the truck at the end of the day. That would also be in a location where it was, suitable for, jacking. Because, like armored car is, it's an armored car. It has like an armed guard and stuff like that. So you do have to be pretty good with that. And so, their first heist on that was grabbing money from the armored truck while it was getting a delivery from like a big department store. And, they rolled up on the guys, typical thing like, don't make us kill you, blah, blah, blah. And they were able to get away with money. So like even on that first armored heist, they got somewhere over $100,000. Which, is a lot. And this is like 1983 money. Like it's a good amount of money. The next one that they did was even more coordinated. So they planned a distraction ahead of time. And so that was, I think, in Seattle. Yeah, it was in Seattle. So the day before they robbed the truck, they planted a bomb in a porn theater in Seattle.
All right.
And this was kind of like some of their guys were like starting to develop an interest in bombs. And this was kind of one of their, I think it was their first bombing. And I guess he still didn't really have the time detonator really figured out that well because they like planted it, called the theater and said like, we're going to blow this place up, get everybody out of there. But it blew up like almost immediately. Fortunately, nobody was actually injured. I guess, there weren't that many people in the porn theater. But it did create like a kind of adequate distraction. Like a lot of the cops' focus was on that. And then so the next day, like they hit this armored car. And this one, they were a little bit more aggressive with it. And they kind of pioneered the tactic that they would use in their big Brinks heist, which is they like rolled up in front of the truck, held a sign that said like, you know, stop or you're dead. Like came out with big guns, guns that would be big enough to possibly like puncture, the glass, the armored glass, the drivers, which I think this was the case. I think coincidentally, they were the same drivers as the last heist.
Oh, no shit.
And Matthews like figured out one of their names or something. He was like, "Don't make me shoot you, Mike," or something like that. You know what I mean? And this one
fucking nightmare.
Them, yeah, right. Look, this fucking guys
again.
Like, hit the second time by these Nazis. I think they were black too, the drivers.
Fucking hell.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they said some other shit to them too. But so this heist was their biggest yet, and this was well over $250,000. There were a lot of checks in there. There was like another like $70,000 in checks that they couldn't do anything with, so they burned it.
Whoa! All right.
But like, you know, they yielded a significant amount of cash. They immediately gave $40,000 to the Aryan nations, which of course Richard Butler was very pleased about, and kind of divided the rest up amongst themselves and kept like I think a good like 80 or 90,000 of it for their further operations.
Okay.
So this would be their, like I said, their biggest robbery until they pull off the major one, and they kind of didn't do really many in the process. But I will really quickly just mention what happened to their buddy Pierce with the counterfeit bills.
This is Bruce Pierce, not William
Bruce Pierce. Yeah. No, Bruce Pierce.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is kind of confusing. There are multiple Pierces, but Bruce Pierce, member of the order, was tasked with passing off fake bills. And, you know, they would do this every once in a while. They'd drive out to some other town and, you know, whatever, you buy a newspaper, pay with a 50, get the rest change. It's clean money, blah, blah, blah. And he got caught doing it at some mall. And I guess this is kind of like funny chase scene where like he's getting chased by mall cops.
Awesome.
He has like this bag full of money and like, and then the real cops come and he's like trying to flush it down the toilet. And all this shit. And he manages to get rid of most of it, but like the cops figured out that like this wasn't a guy with a fake bill. It was a guy with many fake bills, probably related to like a more serious counterfeiting operation. So of course then like the feds get involved.
Okay.
And he gets locked up, and this is before some of their bigger heists. So this is before I think the $100,000 heist. And like, you know, he's calling them from jail and he's like, "Look guys, you got to post bail." It's like part of the whole thing. They're like, "Shit, man, like we don't have cash right now." You know, they're busy like buying guns and e-meters too, which is funny.
They're buying what?
Like the Scientologist thing.
Oh,
about, like,
shit.
like the Scientologist, like lie detector or whatever.
Word.
They use those too.
Nice.
I forgot to mention that. That's a fun little fact about them. They relied really heavily on some of those like weird, like I don't know, like polygraph kind of things, like a voice stress detector. Like one of their later guys was like really into that. Like they would force like all new members to go through that. Anyway, so they didn't have the cash at the moment. You know, Bruce Pierce is stuck in prison, stuck in jail. And so like after, you know, one of the bigger heists, they get him out and he decides to kind of lay low for a little bit and kind of bounces around these like different compounds in the kind of general Washington, Idaho area. Now the feds are like looking for him. And, you know, they go to Matthew's house and like, "Hey, we know that like he's been here. You know, where's he at?" I think he had violated some like terms of his parole or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And probably like, you know, by, you know, buying guns and doing crazy shit. And so this is just like another funny Matthews thing that I want to mention because it's very much in line with something that we've talked about so much, which is the whiny Nazi persecution complex.
Yes.
Phenomenon, I should say.
I'm so glad because I was sure you were going to say pedophilia.
No, yeah. Not actually much pedophilia in this episode.
We've been getting
thankfully.
off easy lately.
So, you know, the local newspaper, I guess, wrote an article about Bruce Pierce and how, like, you know, there's a wanted Aryan counterfeiter, like, running around the general area.
Okay.
And Matthews writes an angry letter to the editor. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to read the first paragraph.
Great.
Because it's fucking hilarious. To the editor, in regards to your article on the Aryan counterfeiter, I wish to know how the story would have been written if Mr. Pierce was a Baptist or a Catholic instead of a member of the Church of Jesus Christ Christian Aryan Nations. Would you have reported that a Baptist counterfeiter had been spotted or referred to him as a confirmed member of the Catholic Church? And then he just goes on to say a bunch of other racist shit about how you never call out the Mexicans and all this other shit.
To be honest, that would be fucking hilarious if people started doing that. If every time somebody was a Catholic, they said confirmed member of the Catholic Church.
I know, right? But how O9A is that though?
Yeah, very. Absolutely, yes. It's a philosophy.
Yes. You're
Good
bigoted.
Good Lord.
Just because I'm the member of the Church of Jesus Christ Christian Aryan Nations doesn't.
Amazing.
Which is a group that randomly shot at a family who drove by their compound.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So what is Pierce up to in this time period? Well, him and his buddy Kemp, also from the Order, decide that they were going to kind of go off on their own and do a little synagogue bombing.
Okay.
So a buddy of theirs, I guess somewhere in Idaho, had found a bunch of sticks of dynamite at an abandoned mine. It was like, hey, you guys, want some explosives? Mm-hmm. To which they, of course, replied yes, and decided that they were going to bomb a synagogue in Boise, Idaho. So they cased out the spot, planted this bomb. I guess it was after services. Nobody was there. And it did some damage, not too much, but, it caused a lot of attention and actually kind of pissed Matthews off because he was like, Pierce, people are looking for you and you're out there bombing shit. And
right.
Plus, why didn't I get to come along? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And this is a thing that you kind of see consistently. There are some within the Order, they get jealous of each other for certain things. And there's kind of a little bit of power struggles that occur kind of.
Yeah. Too many fears in the kitchen. We talked about it before.
Yep. We noticed that over the last few months, and this is all happening kind of within a year of their activities, when they started, they're kind of gradually stepping it up. And we do know that that the Order has a couple bodies on it, right? And so I think it would be good to maybe end this episode with their first murder and kind of the less famous one.
Okay.
So I mean, kind of not unlike groups we've talked about in the past. Their first foray into murder was killing another Nazi.
Sure.
This is a phenomenon that we've seen over and over again, whether it's Atomwaffen or whatever. They
Nazi on Nazi
Nazis.
violence.
Now this one had a kind of security culture aspect to it, which is kind of odd. It makes me wonder whether there was actually something else going on too, because we'll see later that their security culture isn't that great. But there was an Aryan Nations associate named Walter West, who was famous kind of for being a local drunkard. And it got back to Matthews and the Order that West was getting drunk at local bars around the, in the towns around the Aryan Nation compound and running his mouth about robberies. That that these Aryans are doing robberies, all this kind of shit, kind of gloating, right? That he kind of knows these guys and how cool that is. And so they decide to get rid of him. He's a liability. He's out there running his mouth, and they don't want to get caught. So they decide to kill him in a pretty gruesome fashion. At this point, they'd also had a couple new members join, a couple Vietnam vet kind of dudes who were less shy about murdering people.
Yeah.
And they decide that what they should do is kill him with a sledgehammer.
Damn.
So that gunfire doesn't attract attention. So not all of
not a sledgehammer covered in brains,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It doesn't make noise, but I mean this is rural Idaho. I think there's people firing guns constantly.
For real.
Whatever.
Absolutely.
But they decided they would be kind of slick about it.
All right.
And there was, I should mention, a kind of a little bit of a divide within the Order about stepping up to killing people. Like some of them kind of weren't cool with that. Like the good guy, quote unquote, Ken, was like dead set against that. And the others thought that like, okay, yeah, we need to commit assassinations and shit, but we have to like get there. But you know, so Matthews kind of broke a smaller group out of the larger order that was kind of the kill team. And it was 4 dudes. 2 dudes went out into the woods and dug a deep grave, kind of far away in the middle of nowhere, while the other 2 went to the local bar to pick West up. Now, you know, this is before cell phones, whatever. So they come in, they're like, hey, West, like, you know, your wife's looking for you, you know, come with us. You know, you're drunk, we'll drive you. And so they pick him up, put him in the truck, and drive him into the woods. And like kind of, this guy starts to suspect something's going on, but he doesn't really know. And one of them comes up behind him with a fucking sledgehammer and clocks him in the fucking head with the sledgehammer.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't kill him.
No.
And apparently he started screaming like, what are you guys doing? Why? And he was like bleeding profusely. Just got hit in the head with a fucking sledgehammer.
God.
So the non-vet out of them just pulls his gun out and blows his fucking head off.
So they used a gun anyway.
So they used a
all
gun
that.
anyway. So there's absolutely no need to hit this Nazi in the face with a sledgehammer.
Now instead of 1 murder weapon, you have 2 murder weapons. Yes.
Yeah.
Good operation.
But, you know, they quickly buried him, and to my knowledge, they've never found the body. Like, they've kept quiet about that. Because, like, the guys that committed the murder weren't the ones that would talk later. So they know that they killed him. They know how they killed him. Like, they talked about that aspect of it, but they've never found the body. So, you know, once you get the taste for killing, as they say, the second round's easier. And it was not long thereafter that they started to hatch their plans for stepping it up to what I think they called level 5. And level 5 was targeted assassinations.
Okay.
Like I said, some of them weren't kind of into it, but Matthew said, okay, the guys who want to, you know, who are okay with it, come with us. The rest of you guys stick to like whatever, robbing banks and counterfeiting or whatever.
Right.
And this might be a good place to stop because they start assembling a kill list, which is mostly comprised of like Jews and like kind of prominent Jewish figures in America. And that's, I think, where we'll leave off. And next episode, we'll start with their most famous killing, which was the killing of journalist Alan Berg in Denver.
All right.
Okay.
Well, damn. Dark place to end, darker place to start next time.
Yeah. It gets pretty crazy. Like basically from Berg till the end of Matthews, it's only a matter of months. But they do a lot of crazy ass shit.
All right. Well, good to get to know him. Good to get to know Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting group for a lot of things that we talked about, like post Second World War. Like we did, I think 3 episodes on like Christian identity and British Israelism, and then we did a bunch of episodes on the National Alliance. I don't know how many do you remember? And
I think
and
4
Pierce.
of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is like somehow this group consists out of Christian identity guys and also people connected to National Alliance. And also it's a kind of a proto like Atomwaffen group.
Sure.
In a way.
Yeah. But it also ties in, like we said, John Birch. The Minutemen are kind of in there as well. Like there's it cuts a deep cross section here.
And he even had a connection with Liberty Lobby, which is interesting.
Yeah. I believe it's pronounced Liberty Lobby.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you can't cover American Nazis without talking about the Order.
No.
It's kind of the most legendary one. Lots of movies have been made about it. Both about like the Order itself and the killing of Alan Berg. Oliver Stone did a film about Alan Berg, right? And I guess we'll probably cover one of those as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Do they have
Cool,
do we need to get a white baby to watch it, or can we just like watch it?
Yeah. You have to arrange some candles around your laptop or TV or whatever you're watching it on.
Right.
You have to.
We'll just tell people we're babysitting,
Yeah. And put an ad out in the paper. Need white baby for initiation ritual.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, see you. I guess see you in the our
Yeah, see you
little
next
underground movie theater so we can watch
and
some
then-
cinema together. And
Yep.
all right.
And then we'll get back to the end of the Order, or the
Thank-
Silent Brotherhood.
Yeah, best thing about them so far is that they ended, and that they needed a white baby. Those are the two best things about it. All right, guys,
All right.
let's get out of here.
All right, later.
Bye.
Hey there, Fritz here from The Empire Never Ended. This has been one of our weekly free episodes for free people. But for premium people, we also have weekly premium episodes, which you can get at patreon.com/tenepod, TENEPOD, and also follow our various social media things in the show description there. Like and subscribe them. Follow them. Like and follow and subscribe. Follow them. Do it.